and some of the key product updates and where the product is going in the near to midterm future. Hopefully this will give you an idea of why we're doing this, the reasons behind it, but also the value that you can get out of the technology. Today we're going to be joined by Jeremy Bentley, who is our executive in charge of strategy for MarkLogic, who will be presenting MarkLogic 2.0, or the new MarkLogic. Following Jeremy will be Mateo Gonzalez. He's the executive in charge of our product management and development. He's going to give you a product roadmap preview. He's going to tell you about some of the key timelines that we've been working towards this year and next, and hopefully that will give you a better understanding of what you've been doing. And finally, there'll be a Q&A at the end of the session where we'll answer some of your questions that will come in throughout. There's a little ask question box below your screen, so feel free to ask any questions to our speakers. And without further ado, I will hand you over to Jeremy now. Jeremy.
Oh, greetings. Thank you very much for your time. I was wondering where we start this conversation. We've got a lot of customers and partners and on this call, many hundred actually. So it's obviously got a lot of interest. And so I thought I would share with you, as you've got on the giving this executive briefing, you've got both Mathieu Jonglei and Jeremy Bentley, who are the co-founders of Smartlogic, now responsible for strategy and product. So just sharing with you some of the reasons why we agreed to merge with MarkLogic and become MarkLogic. It seemed to be a good place to start, and I'll cover that in some detail. But and we'll go through our story a little bit, and then we'll get into what we're bringing, what we're trying to do. But if you want one soundbite to remember what MarkLogic 2.0 is about, it's about delivering data agility. This is not a phrase that we coined. It was a phrase that actually the mutual customers that both the Semaphore users, which is the semantic metadata management product that Smartlogic had been introducing since 2006, and then and MarkLogic customers who had also implemented the MarkLogic multi-model database, and they were starting to say, you know, this gives us real data agility, and that's very much resonated with us. And you'll see, we've been working together as partners for quite some time, and actually, genuinely, you know, why? Well, we believe that the old way of working with data is no longer fit for purpose. It's too brittle. We know it's too siloed, and we know it's integration centric. And everyone goes, yeah, I know everything's about integration. And actually, it's one of the reasons why it's rather it takes far too long to get traditional data management to accommodate change easily or quickly. The first thing that happens is architects get together and work out the spaghetti that is the whiteboard about how do we effect what is, you know, a change in the business for whatever reason. And of course, successful businesses is about being able to respond to change rapidly, being able to innovate rapidly. That is successful business. And then behind the scenes, those of us in the data world scrabbling to try and be agile. It's become too integration centric, and so it's no longer. That was what we found, was it's no longer fit for purpose. So we were tackling the metadata issue, so data about data. MarkLogic tackling the agile aspect through multi-model, and our biggest customers were implementing these two software platforms and taking the risk of the integration. So it wasn't a great piece of conceptual thought to say we should merge and become one, because our customers voted, many of our largest customers who are actually on this call today, voted by actually implementing that. We do believe that this there is a better way. This idea of data agility means that you can massively increase our customers' ability to make better decisions, armed with quality and complete data from one system that responds to change easily and provides data that's in context for the use case, the audience, and the state of the data at that point in use. And we'll follow those ideas through. So very briefly, so 2001 was MarkLogic's founding. 2002 was the launch of the MarkLogic server, genuinely the world's first database designed to be agile. You know, give us your data. We don't care what format it's in. We don't care what shape it is. We don't know whether it's structured or unstructured or whatever. It's an agile data repository. Matt and I launched Semaphore in 2006. That was the world's first semantic metadata management platform. By about 2013, the RDF, OWL, SCORS, Sparkle, W3C's semantic standards were very much have won that battle. And the standards were embraced by the products. And we started partnering with MarkLogic in 2014. Track forward to 2017 and 2021, interesting things happen. 4 years in a row, we've been leader in the metadata management quadrant. MarkLogic Visionary in the Cloud DBMS Magic Quadrant, top rated by Infotech in metadata management. Something over 2,000 projects undertaken. Vector Capital, if you know them, acquire MarkLogic in 2020. Why is that important? Well, because they're a growth equity fund. What does growth equity mean? It means capital to go off and do things like buy other companies, one of which was ours. Growth equity also comes when there's growth opportunity. And it's this data agility, which is that opportunity. And that's what led to this. And you should, as customers, expect, as this vision unfolds, you will expect MarkLogic to be funded by Vector to be able to acquire more companies to complete the vision, of which this, I believe, is fundamentally going to change the way we work with data. And for those of our customers who've implemented MarkLogic and Semaphore together, it already has fundamentally changed the way we work with data, and it is that data agility. So what's our focus? It's very much about simplifying complex data problems. And the how is by coupling all and any data with everything that is known about that data, as well as what it means. So we know, I think everyone knows what metadata is, the AIR, it's data about data. It's actually, the word about is more important than data about data. It's the aboutness that's important, because it describes how data is defined, what we know about it, and all those things. So we are coupling all and any data with all and any of its metadata, everything that we know about that data, and providing it out of a single data platform. And it's much of that that's delivering this data agility. And its effect is profound, because once you've got a platform you can go to for data and everything you know about it, it can augment all the information services that in your enterprise, so they can too respond nimbly to business change. So what is it? It's a semantic data platform. We're calling it a semantic data platform, not because it only deals with semantic data, but because it's a data platform that it also contains the meaning, and that's what semantics is the meaning of the data as a payload along with the data. So any data item you can think of as a data item with its payload of description and meaning. And that's quite profound, in the sense that we want to be able to connect any data We don't care what it is. We don't care what it looks like. We don't care how much there is of it. We want to be able to connect. And this is one of the great strengths of MarkLogic, has been its enterpriseness, its ability to cope with vast quantities of data, which our largest customers have, in many different places, internal and external to the organization, structured and unstructured, and anything in between. So we will need to be able to connect any data. We need to be able to connect any application of any architecture of any age and any workflow. Right? And then what we need to do is we need to be able to create, and as you could add, create and interpret that data. And that is the role of the metadata, the creation of data. You may not have the data in your database. It may have to come from a document of record, like a contract or even an email or a tweet or something, that the data never made it into the formal database. It's sitting out there somewhere. And so the whole sort of semantic concept of being able to, dumpster dive into big documents and pull out data and create data, very important. We may want to go out and pick out facts out of the data. We may need to apply natural language processing and do classification, but we want to end up with a single enriched data resource that is the data and everything that we know about that data. So first we've connected, then we've created it, we're creating and interpreting, and then we're consuming. And how do we consume? Number of consumption patterns. Informed search, for example, used when you need a contextual or complete 360-degree view search experience, for example, giving exceptional customer service in banking, right? Too many silos, too many bits of information not there. Tell me, simple question, which I think is a fundamentally difficult one for most banks to answer, which is give me the name of every customer who's got a balance of over $100,000 and have written us a letter of complaint in the last 3 weeks. Very, very hard to solve unless you use the combination of the agile database and the agile and active metadata at the time. Contextual applications. As the data layer behind any business application that requires context, and data always requires context. It requires, say for drug compliance in life sciences, digital twin projects in aerospace. That contextual application is consuming data and everything we know about that data in context. Grounded data. For analytics, our data needs to be trustworthy, and we come into the requirement for data quality. So, say for pre-processing data for machine learning analytics, I've been quoted quite a few times now, going, "Why burn carbon with using machine learning when you already know the data? You know it's a brand. Why not try to tell it it's a brand?" So the data comes with its label, and that label can then be put in to boost the quality of the machine learning analytics, so you can find out stuff you don't know, not stuff that you already know but just weren't able to get into that kind of application, for example. And then facts-based intelligence. Sometimes that's called object-based intelligence, sometimes it's called activity-based intelligence, but it's a very metadata-centric concept around intelligence activities, say tracking networks of persons of interest through their communications interactions, not listening to the conversations, you're looking at who they know through the metadata of their conversations. That as an example. Okay. So that's what it is. It's a semantic data platform that connects, creates, and consumes data in all its shapes and forms to create data agility. When we look at our customers, and many of you are here today, I think it's fair that you are data visionaries. You chose MarkLogic in the first place. You saw the advantages of multi-model. If you're a Semaphore customer, you saw the advantages of semantic metadata management, not just, data dictionaries. You needed to see the whole range of the spectrum of metadata, understanding that metadata was becoming very important. So our customers jointly are data visionaries, and they've chosen us. We can't possibly publish everyone's name that is a customer. So we've taken a stab at some of the key areas, but there's some obvious ones that are missing. So we are helping our customers solve complex data problems faster and more simply, right? And these problems are everywhere. We think about the complexity of doing research, the complexity of doing state security, the complexity of in finance and industry, the complexity of building aircrafts, of bringing new therapies to market, of detecting and reacting to threats, serving customers better, of reducing the burden of compliance. These are all complex data problems which demand that you've got both the data and what you know about that data in context to its state, its use, and its audience. It's very, very key. So some examples, in financial services, we're used for very much regulatory compliance, reducing that burden of compliance, proving that best practice is being enforced. We're used in Customer 360, so bringing together all those different silos of data and knowledge about a customer so that you can better service your customers. Risk assessment, where in many cases in insurance we've gone from risk reporting to risk assessment. So risk reporting is after the event. Risk assessment is, do we want to take the risk right now? The data is genuinely changing rapidly. Do we want to take this kind of risk? Let's not find out about it 10 days after it's come back, having been marked up by our low-cost processing center in some other part of the world, when it comes in as a report saying, yeah, we took the risk, we didn't know we were doing such. So things like that. In pharma and healthcare, research and development, new product introduction, huge real-world evidence, compliance and reporting, and all the many other aspects of compliance. And I can carry on with different examples, but very much complex data problems demanding, the richness of the MarkLogic platform with the richness of Semaphore, because bringing together the metadata with the data gives you a massive data advantage, in the sense that you're getting data quality, you're getting all sorts of things which we're going to go through in a minute. So what is this data agility? If you look up, I was writing this presentation earlier, and I went I think we all instinctively know what agility is, actually, but it is defined as the ability to move nimbly with speed and ease. And so data agility is the ability to make nimble changes to any aspect of how information is used, interpreted, and acted on with speed and ease. And I know when we go back to our organizations, some parts of the organization move a little faster than others, but this integration-centric concept that has bound us for many years, it's not fit for purpose. We can solve that, and we have solved it, and in many cases our customers were the guiding light to solving it by putting the two applications together. So the Semantic Data Platform has a full data enrichment, data consumption pipelines, and Matthew will talk a little later about how we're integrating more deeply integrating Semaphore into those pipelines to at a fundamental product level. We are integrated today. If you were to say, I want MarkLogic 2.0, in the sense of the company coming together of Semaphore and MarkLogic, the products are integrated. They've been proven, it's out of the box, it's done. But of course, as we now are one company, we can do a whole load of extra clever integration that makes it better and better and better. And that's the program. We know that data and everything you know about it needs to come from a single service, because you start to see, start to accept that metadata is data, very valuable data, and we'll talk about that a little later. But actually, it has to come from a single resource. Otherwise, we just have another integration-centric issue where you have your metadata layer integrated with your data layer by some third party, and versions change, and and then we, as an organization trying to be agile, we've got to worry about versions and all those things with every integration we have from every other, vendor. And so that's part of the secret here, is going to a very comprehensive data platform where there's a huge amount of functionality, both multimodal and semantic, tightly integrated from a single vendor. Second thing is we're data agnostic. We don't care what the data looks like. We're very good at connecting it, interpreting it, and putting it into context. Basically, you can use the airline mode. We bag the data, we tag it, and you can use it immediately. And using it immediately was one of the things that I was always impressed by MarkLogic as a customer, because remember, we actually built the Semaphore cloud on the back of using the MarkLogic database. So we were both a customer, and now we're one. So this use immediately is quite profound when you get into it. And I'm sure if you're using MarkLogic, you know what that means. It means not having to do ETL, which is another reason why you can't be agile, because you're bounded by schema and all those sorts of things, which I know you know well. So what does this data platform look like? It's a unified platform. It's the multi-model database, which we use with its strong connection capabilities. And we use the semantic AI, which is Semaphore, to create and interpret the data in really very profound ways that allows us to generate context, allows us to add in data to an incomplete data set, to add in data that is complete. It allows us to govern data. It allows us, and we'll look at some of that. And it's consumed in three specific patterns. So if we look at the data hub addresses a situation where you want a single data resource to hold data and its metadata together as an analytical or application data store, right? It may or it may not be a persistent source of record. It may be a hub in the sense that you're doing something with the data, it's transient and you just need to keep it for a while. How long? Up to you. How much? Up to you. What is it? Up to you. But it's not necessarily persistent. It's persistent for as long as you need it to be persistent. Or it can be a true data source of record. When you look at the knowledge graph, knowledge graph, semantic knowledge graph specifically, are a new way of providing analytical data, which is not restricted by traditional schemas. And it makes all of the full use of the MarkLogic graph data capabilities. Knowledge graphs are incredibly good at predictive and investigative analytic type requirements. They're relatively new. There's a lot of hype about them, but genuinely, when you've got data and everything you know about it in a graph format, you're able to do things that you just can't do the old way, and it's very exciting. And then the metadata management is for when you have third-party data stores that you want to augment with the MarkLogic metadata capabilities, with or without the multi-model by its side. So 3 consumption patterns that address 3 very, I think 3 very strong deployment types. The advantage of having the metadata, semantic metadata management, and the multi together is the data that comes out and it can be managed and is actually produced and run and is the following. You get data in context. The semantic gives the data the context. The context is your context. You set the context. Data quality, which everyone struggles with, is there because we're now adding, necessarily, we may be completing the data set by going back to documents or text artifacts or something to actually get the data that wasn't there or that might have been incomplete or may have been downgraded in quality because it went through a transform process somewhere up the chain and we now need to recreate it to give it back its originality. Unity, data unity is about bringing together all the different types of data that you find. Data security is profoundly transformed when you start seeing your data through the eyes of context, through the eyes of security, rather than just relying on interesting things like access control lists and all that security layer. When you start to be able to see what the data is about, you can then decide, who's it intended for? How much of this do we want to give them? We need to put it in context. We'll give them what we specifically need, and we can also make sure that we don't give them what we don't wish to give them. And that's all metadata driven. And of course, there's a whole side of data governance. So you start thinking of MarkLogic, the data platform, as being able to connect, create, and consume, and add in the data context, the data quality, the data unity, the data security, and the data governance. And what comes out of the business outcomes, why people want to implement this in the first place. Well, everyone wants the agility, but it's usually exposed through customer experience, the best customer experience you can give to your customers, through product innovation, more rapid product innovation. And product innovation, if you're in expensive product innovation, you want to get it through, and particularly if you're in a regulated industry, you want to innovate fast, get it through its regulatory approvals, but it's equally important to quickly fail before you spend a lot of money waiting for something that happened later on. So it's product innovation in both aspects. Our intelligence needs to be trusted. We might call that enterprise intelligence, trusted intelligence. So much it means moving potentially from business intelligence, which is often departmental and siloed, and to analytics, which are across the enterprise as a whole, with the data quality so it's trusted, and ultimately supporting smarter decisions. And when we're in senior roles in data or senior roles in business, we've got this big problem, some complex data problem. These are not small decisions. These are decisions of consequence, and needing to trust the data and know that it's complete, it's of quality, it can support the executive decision of consequence needed for a particular responsibility. Often it's compliance related, but not only. So another way of seeing this is what we call the data agility supply chain. And it's possibly a repeat, but sometimes it's easier to see things through the data flow as opposed to just the picture I put up before. But we're connecting any data in any format, in any language, any volume, from any application of any architecture of any age, working with any workflow, with any process. And then what's happening in the middle is we're creating and interpreting the data and everything we know about that data to apply the context, the governance, the quality, the unity, and the security. And what that gives you is a single, enriched, trusted source of data and what it means, ready for immediate use. And then how is it consumed? It's consumed as high quality contextual data, right? And it's used in the ways that I outlined earlier. My next slide is a slight switch, because we're just moving into a little metadata, because I know on the agenda we were talking about what a Semaphore bring, and hopefully you've had a feel for that so far. If the multi-model is removing the effect of data silos, the semantics is removing the effect of knowledge silos, and together we're making that data agility. But where does metadata come from? And I think, very briefly, metadata, data, information about information, data about data. Most people think of it as a bit dead, a bit static, but that's moved on significantly in the last few years. So yes, we think of metadata as system applied, dates, creator, source, doubling core, blah blah blah, and it's pretty uninspiring, and it's never looked at. But now what's happened, and certainly since Semaphore has been doing it, is that metadata becomes semantic metadata, and that starts to add a huge amount of value. It's semantic AI generated, right? So human manual input no longer required. System generated. Systems always get their metadata wrong because it's all down to when the user that actually uploaded the document into the document store, not necessarily the author who actually wrote the document, and then you have to rely on the human putting the right numbers in. So all that manual input and all that system generated stuff can typically be replaced with better automation. But that semantic metadata describes the meaning of data, topics, product, concepts, relationships. We'll go into that a bit more. And then increasingly important to projects like data fabrics or process fabrics is both the active and the augmented metadata. Being able to look at facts, being able to change behavior based on status, being able to set protective and retention markers, being able to orchestrate your data, being able to prepare your data for machine learning analytics, so that you're reducing the noise of your machine learning by augmenting your data with what you know about that data, which is calibrated. Okay. So my point here is that metadata is data. It's valuable data. It's not separate. You shouldn't keep it in a separate place. You should keep it with your data, because now you can think of your data as a data item, and it's wearing a backpack, and in that backpack is all the bits about it that you need in order to process and be efficient and be responsive without having to go somewhere else to go and look for it. So this slide is the combination of both. Everyone knows what a multi-model is, I'm assuming, in this audience. You've implemented it quite well. We don't care what the data is. It's graph, it's JSON, it's columnar, it's just data. But actually, the metadata that this is its backpack filled with invaluable information about the data. It could be passive, it could be descriptive, it could be administrative, it could be structural, and that's typically where a lot of the world has sort of got to. But actually, now you start adding in the concepts and its synonyms, its relationships, the links to other sources. You start adding in the ability to have it as active metadata, where it is got you're doing text and context analysis, so you're getting insight into how maybe a conversation is going on through a chat bot, or we've got all the full level of governance attached to that data item, so we know exactly where it came from, who, what, etc. It's driving alerts and recommendations. And when you get into the higher order metadata, you're orchestrating your data. You're doing machine learning analytics and potentially inference. Okay. And what that helps us do is widen the scope of data to deliver trusted data insights that are driving business action. At one end of the data, particularly at one end of we've got data catalogs, and they're sort of where we start to think of around our governance. But actually, at the other end, we've got the semantic knowledge graph, and in the middle, we've got the ability to apply our meanings. We've got the ability to extract data from text assets. We've got the ability to deliver informed search in context, where we, in context to the audience. We've got the ability to do subjective enrichment, if you like. This document is about this. We then kind of put all of this together in the data hub with its metadata. We can drive reporting. We can drive the semantic knowledge graph, all from a single platform. And that brings me to a summary. Why MarkLogic? The goal, the strategy, is to give a single data resource where data and everything you know about that data, i.e. its metadata, regardless of its format, type, location, or quantity, comes out of MarkLogic, the Semantic Data Platform. And then you start to look at some of the deeper aspects, being able to connect and ingest as is, ready for immediate consumption, removes quite a lot of the burden and the brittleness of having to do data preparation. Data agility is the ability to make simple and powerful changes to data, how it is interpreted and how you act on it. Ease of connection, information in context to its state, its use case and its intended audience. Reducing the effect of silos, both data and knowledge. Implementing quite impressive semantic AI, which is using machine learning and knowledge models to synthesize, enrich, extract, harmonize all types of metadata to create what the data means and to complete the data set. And then the trust element of the data is through traceable, so through traceable, transparent, repeatable, auditable, that are understood by business users, and the enterprise grade database capabilities, which I think everyone in this audience is familiar, but the security, the scalability, the availability, the language support, the temporality, the interfaces, the standards-based architecture, everything that you'd expect from a very strong semantic data platform. So I believe that's my part of the introduction. There's quite a lot of themes there, and we'll take some of those themes into the next series of this webinar.
But thanks, Jeremy, very much for that introduction into the new strategy for MarkLogic. I know that you teased that there was more to come, and there certainly is. We plan these series to do ideally once a quarter, where we're going to give you an update. It'll be either on product roadmap, product features, developments, whether they be new or old. So yeah, we're really looking forward to seeing where this series is going. And MJ, I can see you now.
Hey, can you hear me as well?
There we go. That's it. He's ready to go. So thank you very much, Jeremy, and over to Matthew.
Okay. Thank you very much, Jeremy. So you just heard from Jeremy the vision. That vision builds on and extends the core capabilities of the product range. The product DNA is database plus search plus semantics. And those three tenets are critical in delivering the vision. All three are therefore nurtured and further developed in the product roadmap I'm about to present. The drivers for the roadmap align with the gradual and natural implementation path of the vision, starting with capitalizing on the joint MarkLogic and Smartlogic capabilities to demonstrate that vision. The second step on the journey is to continue the ever so important investment in performance and scalability that MarkLogic is synonymous with. DevOps and cloud will also be important priorities as we accompany our customers in the modernization of their IT infrastructure. A pair of critical new drivers to this product roadmap are the end-to-end data experience and the end-to-end user experience to ensure the fluidity, efficiency, and accessibility of that ingest, model, classify, store, retrieve, analyze, and reuse workflow, which is critical to the success of all of our customer projects. And of course, nothing's ever complete, and further innovation is always on the agenda, be it with additional graph analytics capabilities, further linked data support, or with the many internal R&D efforts earmarked to graduate into the product over the coming years. How does this break down by product area? Well, for the MarkLogic server, this is a natural continuation of the existing and ongoing efforts around scalability, monitoring, the modernization of deployment, and the management tooling. We will, of course, be bringing more security and performance-related features like for every MarkLogic release. On the Semaphore side, we are in the process of implementing a much tighter integration with the MarkLogic server, and this will form the launchpad for the new data experience initiative. When it comes to cloud, A new MarkLogic Cloud offering is being built as I speak, exposing all of the capabilities of the combined product stack through a SaaS offering. We have also recently released new Docker images and AMIs for AWS, and our Kubernetes approach is currently in early access with selected customers. On the API, applications, data ingress and egress, and more orchestration in general, MarkLogic, we're essentially dedicating a lot of resource to that area because that's a critical stream to the product roadmap. I mean, MarkLogic plays a pivotal role in enterprise architecture, and our data and user experience streams aim to closely align the practices, the governance, and the skills required to operate MarkLogic with the profiles that are in place at our existing customers and partners. And now it's the moment that all of you are waiting for, I'm sure, the actual roadmap for the financial year. The key highlight of this roadmap is, of course, the release of MarkLogic 11 in December. The breakdown of the features on the next slide. We are, at the moment, finalizing a patch release of MarkLogic 10, and this will come out in September. On the Data Hub side of things, the next release of the user interface will expose the management of semantic relationship. And our first version of the MarkLogic application framework will become available later on in the year. I know there's a question about user interfaces in the chat. The MarkLogic application framework is a new toolkit designed to enable customers and partners to quickly build data-driven applications on top of MarkLogic. The Semaphore development continues, as outlined earlier on, with an emphasis on the integration with the MarkLogic server. And MarkLogic Cloud, of course, a Kubernetes-based SaaS offering combining MarkLogic and Semaphore will launch in February. The key features of MarkLogic 11 are listed on this slide, which I'm not going to read, but the key takeaway is that they fall in three categories. Enhancements to the object query language, which is a multi-model query feature of MarkLogic, new security capabilities, and improvement to performance and observability. In addition to the already mentioned tighter integration with the MarkLogic server, the next version of Semaphore will also see, like in every version, improvement to the usability, productivity, and governance features. And the facts framework and the linked data capabilities will also receive new features. All in all, it's a very exciting roadmap for the year ahead, bringing to life the vision of MarkLogic as a unique semantic data platform. Philip, over to you.
Okay, great, Matthew. Thank you very much, and thanks for giving us that preview of MarkLogic 11. As you mentioned, that will launch in December, and we're continuing to invest in the platform. We're already planning for development of MarkLogic 12. We're going to go on to a Q&A. We've got a couple of polls that we wanted to run for you, really so that we can get your feedback, so that we can look at future events, content that you want to see, and support you would like to see added to the product. If you've got any questions, please feel free to answer them now. Matthew and Jeremy are really well placed to give you a response. We did have a question around that, like I say, the user experience, and you can tell from the roadmap. I think that's definitely going to get better. I know that there's some accessibility features that are also being built into MarkLogic, which I think is really interesting, certainly for some of our federal customers, as well as the partners that deal in that space. So I just wanted to ask Matthew and Jeremy, in terms of one of the questions that I wanted to sort of pose, I guess, was around the cloud offering. Are you looking at sort of just a self-managed cloud offering with a partner, or are you looking at different options for the future?
So we're looking at a number of options. I mean, it's essentially an offering with three levels. One which will be a business level offering, if you want, for POCs and small projects, which is managed by MarkLogic, delivered by MarkLogic, and all of everything you've got access to is essentially the UI and the APIs, and everything else is managed. A enterprise offering, which is offering more capabilities in terms of sizing, mostly, and an MSP offering as well, for those situations where the level of support, the level of customization, the SLA, and all of those things need to dovetail into the client-owned processes rather than those of our managed service offering.
Okay. All right. Well, that's really interesting. Just a quick question: the slide deck that you see today, we'll try and make that available to you. If you've got any requests, please just send email to csm@marklogic.com, and we'll make sure that we get that out to you. These questions seem to be coming thick and fast, so let me see if I can deal with the one that's just come in now. Does GraphQL support mean that there will be an interpreter for GraphQL in the actual database query layer? Also, is it only planned to query triples, or will this include document data?
So the GraphQL endpoint is indeed in the server layer, and it will be able to query both the triples and the document models. It is going to essentially replicate the query capabilities of Optics. It's actually based upon it. The thing that's worth noting about that GraphQL support is it is read-only. It's not supporting mutations, and in its first version, it will also not support introspection.
Okay. And what capabilities do you think? I mean, we've got coming in here. We've got some good feedback for the polls, and the content classification seems to have polled really well with our customers in terms of being able to classify that content. Jeremy, can you speak to that?
Yes, content classification in general. If you think of when any organization gets into trouble, the lawyers do not say, "Get me a database done." What they say is, "Get me a contract." Right? Let's have a look at the contract, and we'll decide if we have a really big disagreement. And that is so. The source of record is always the document. And then what happens is that document, in part of the business process, gets moved usually to some low-cost center where you can pick out, classify that document using a human who does this stare and compare task and makes the data that goes into the database. And it's at that point that the data quality actually starts to degrade, because humans are really not good at repeatedly looking at screens and picking up bits of data. Plus, there's a whole load of data that's left in the document. And the right way, of course, is to use automation. That's artificial intelligence automation to replace that dreadful task of pulling data out of documents. And of course, if you can do it in nanoseconds, not in weeks, you can, which is quite often how long it takes. The SLA for a big contract comes back within 7 days after it's been signed. Right? If you can do that in nanoseconds, milliseconds, you can actually start to feed things in. So there's a huge advantage. Firstly, efficiency. Secondly, just being able to get all the data out of your contracts that's relevant, that you need automatically. Yeah. So that's the classification side. I think fact extraction requires a bit more explanation, because I saw it came down lower on the poll. Fact extraction is actually it's really cool. Because it can go straight. It's like having a pair of chopsticks and pulling out each, I only want the brown piece of rice out of my, my fried rice. I need that bit of data out. And so the combination of classification, which is more of thematic, more what's this document about and things, and the metadata, but the actual fact extraction is it makes data, it makes triples, and those triples go in. Right?
I think one of my colleagues does explains it as you want to ask natural language questions of your data. You want to be able to talk to it as a human being. Somebody put in there they'd like to Google the answer, and that's what fact extraction allows you to do. And I think he gives a good example whereby if you're building a building, you're going to need to know the code for the fire doors so that you make them the right height, the right width, the right density, out of the right material. But those could be in hundreds of different documents across your database, and you just want to know what's that size. And I think being able to get down to that level of question is really interesting. I think will drive a lot of business value for people in terms of savings, in terms of insight, and things like that. So,
I think in the next series we'll do some shared use cases of classification, fact extraction, that sort of thing. Because we can in an hour that we've got today, and I gratefully appreciate the time everyone's given us. Once we get into it, you'll see we make data. I mean, we make high quality, complete data. So some of the data comes in from the old systems, but some of the data doesn't exist. So we need to make it. We need to calibrate it. We need to, we want to standardize it, make it of high quality. It has a standard stamp on it. We need to govern it. We need to do all these things. And a lot of this is what's actually going on in the classification and the fact extraction process, which is probably worth looking at.
Yeah, definitely. Another question came in. It's what are the advantages of a Kubernetes over an AMI instance in the cloud? If these questions are getting too technical, if you think the answer is going to take too long, then we will be able to reach out to those people. That
Not me. I know who's going to answer.
Let me answer that one in 10 seconds. AMIs are AWS specific, and behind the scene, you still have to manage VMs, etc. With Kubernetes, all the orchestration layer is abstracted. It works on AWS, on Azure, on on-prem systems. It's a completely different paradigm to orchestration, much more flexible.
See, that's why we had MJ on the call there. I think we would have been paddling uphill for that one. But another question that's just come in was the semantic AI being said not to require manual input. Will we still need to build and enrich ontologies?
You do. Somewhere along the line, every system has, when you implement a system, everything, you have to put some effort in somewhere. If you care about data quality, then you have to have something that controls the artificial intelligence so that it's governed properly, it's equipped to know the context. And the best way of equipping the machine with the subject matter expertise is through an ontology. That doesn't mean that you have to build it without help. It doesn't mean it's not assisted in the build. It doesn't mean we can't find candidate terms, candidate relationships using machines to do it, and we do. But at some point, we believe there needs to be a subject matter expert, a business person who knows that is the right context for that subject with that thing.
Yeah.
And so there is an editorial concept, which is a human has to make that connection live. Doesn't mean we can't suggest one, but someone who understands, if it's an accounting use case, some accountant needs to go, that's right, that's how it should be. So yes, you have to manage and maintain your ontologies. And let's not forget that there are so many now, a lot of linked resources coming out of the shared communities of interest, regulators, different industry bodies, all are creating what you might call good starter packs. And then it's and particularly in life sciences, they've been doing this for years, so they have to subscribe to certain taxonomies and ontologies as per regulation, but then they can use it to help with their research activities as well by adding in their own view of the world through that. And so yes, you do have to put effort in somehow. We can't pour the data into the machine and come out with perfect answers without some effort. The effort though is nowhere near the effort taken to assemble an unbiased training set, I assure you.
Yeah, no, that's great. There's another one that's come in just regarding custom user interfaces. So are you providing a means to create custom user interfaces very quickly? Will you support named entity recognition? We support standard data preparation for pipelines for ML, which I think that might be 3 questions. He's being greedy in that one there, but perhaps
it is indeed separate topics. So user interface, custom user interface, that's exactly the objective of the MarkLogic application framework I introduced earlier on. So it will be a library of React components that will very quickly enable a customer or a partner to build an application on top of MarkLogic using all of the APIs and using all of the data paradigms from MarkLogic. When it comes to the machine learning, entity recognition is actually a key part of Semaphore already. And out of the box today, when you use MarkLogic and Semaphore together, you have all of the linguistic stack and natural language processing, lemmatization, tokenization, all of the word decompounding, segmentation, all the morphological analysis and entity recognition coming with Semaphore. And all of that can directly be used to drive the classification and drive the interpretation of content. So all of those things, and I'm extrapolating the context of the question here, mean that the fact extraction and also mean that the more subjective classification that Jeremy introduced earlier on can be used as feature vectors in machine learning applications.
Yeah. And just going back to Jeremy's point and kind of covering that as well, in terms of, we build the ontology, we work with your knowledge centers, your expert users and things like that to build the ontology. But then that enrichment is a part of the automation, part of the process of delivering that insight from your data.
I think it's quite important to understand that with Semaphore, it's our customers who manage their own ontologies. It's not a hard task. We've built Semaphore to be very easy to use by a business user who understands their subject matter. And then what we do is we make sure that the structures of that, the architecture, if you like, the structures of that model, that semantic model, are right for the application use case that you've got in mind. So we provide a small amount of professional services to get the structures right. And then to help get that model going, we've got methodologies that allow us to, go, because actually most organizations do actually have semantic models available. They just don't appreciate them. They can be reference data sources in databases. They can be drop-down lists in content management systems. They can be, they can be shared, industry shared ones. I mean, there's a method to bring it all together to make it coherent. But it's a subject matter. A business user does that. Right? Yeah. Someone with a command of because otherwise you end up with maths grads disintermediating the subject matter from the machine, and then therefore the business doesn't trust it because you had to get a maths grad who doesn't understand pharmaceutical molecular research. So that's the reason why we like the business user to be doing the work, because you trust it when you know how it works and you can see it.
Well, I think we're coming to the top of the hour now. We have got some more questions. If we haven't had a chance to answer your question today, we will make sure that we connect you with a Semaphore or MarkLogic or combined expert to make sure that you get the right answers. If you have further questions, again, it's csm@marklogic.com. You can ask those questions there. This will go on demand as well. So if you would like to share it, about 20 to 25 minutes after the session, this video should go to an on-demand link. So you'll be able to share this with your colleagues. I wanted to thank MJ and Jeremy for their contribution today for this first in the Vision series. I'm going to leave you now with a teaser. We've got some new digital acceleration stuff coming up in September/October. There's a new initiative that there might be music to some people's ears in terms of content that we're putting out to hopefully bring more industry speakers into these sessions. And then finally, that launch of M11, you can definitely make sure that we will be putting some information out and making sure that we align these digital events to that as well. So, so look forward to that. Once again, thanks very much for attending. Thank you to the speakers, and hope you have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.